During the 11th and 12th centuries CE, political and military leaders of the Seljuk Turks would often awaken to a chilling surprise: a dagger, firmly planted in the floor beside their bed. Despite formidable fortress walls, bolted doors, and armed guards, someone had entered their private chambers and left a stark message: comply, or the next time, the dagger would find its way into their chest. Sometimes, however, no warning was given. A merciless blade would swiftly claim the life of its target. This unique blend of intimidation and targeted assassinations of high-profile victims became the signature tactics of a group known as the Assassins, loyal followers and guardians to the founder and leader of their movement, Hasan Sabbah. Hasan and his adherents emerged during a tumultuous and complex era of political, ethnic, and religious strife across Persia and the Middle East. This was a period marked by various Muslim factions warring amongst themselves, even as they simultaneously confronted European crusaders. Understandably, the history from this time is often obscured by layers of myth, legend, and propaganda. Who exactly were these assassins, and what was their true agenda? What was their relationship with the enigmatic Knights Templar? And who was the mysterious figure known as the Old Man of the Mountain? This article will attempt to address these questions by narrating Hasan's life and uncovering the reality behind the legends. But first, let's explore how the assassin legend first captivated Europe. One of the earliest written accounts of the assassins comes from William of Tyre, a French priest and historian living in Syria. In the early 1180s, William noted, "In the province of Tyre is a certain people who have 10 castles and surrounding lands, and we have often heard that there are 60,000 of them or more. Both we and the Saracens call them assassins, but I don't know where the name comes from." However, Europeans would have to wait until 1298 for a more detailed, albeit highly sensationalized, understanding of this mysterious order, when Rustichello da Pisa published the travels of Marco Polo. The Venetian traveler vividly describes a land called Mulahet, where the Old Man of the Mountain held sway. This figure, according to Polo, had constructed the most magnificent garden in the world, featuring 3 canals flowing with water, honey, and wine, and inhabited by the most handsome boys and maidens. Only those destined to become his assassins were admitted. He would drug them with opium, allowing them to awaken in the garden and believe they were experiencing a vision of heaven. Upon their next awakening, the old man would transport them back to the real world. Longing to return to this paradise, these young men were manipulated into becoming devoted assassins, believing that only death as martyrs for their cause would grant them re-entry into the Garden of Delights. Marco Polo claimed this manipulation was the key to the assassins' effectiveness as killers, and it was why the old man was so feared that rulers across Asia paid him regular tribute to avoid assassination. Polo's account dramatically concludes with the tale of how, in 1265, the lord of the Tatars, Alao, weary of this wickedness, besieged the old man's fortress for 3 years, eventually starving out both the man of the mountain and all his assassins. But how much of Marco Polo's captivating narrative reflects historical truth, and how much is embellished legend or even slander circulated by their enemies? We are about to find out as we delve into the life of Hasan Sabbah. Hasan Sabbah was born in 1050 in Qom, a city in modern-day Iran that was and remains one of the holiest centers of Shia Islam and a leading hub for Muslim scholarship in Persia. His father, Ali bin Muhammad bin Jafar al-Sabbah al-Himyari, originally from Yemen, adhered to the Twelver tradition of Shia Islam. After Hasan's birth, the Sabbah family settled in Ray, where young Hasan received his early religious education in accordance with his father's beliefs. To provide context, the schism between Shia and Sunni Muslims was primarily political, stemming from differing views on succession after the Prophet Muhammad's death in 632. While Sunni Muslims believe leadership should be earned by consensus, Shias believe it belongs to the Prophet's direct descendants. The Twelver tradition, mainstream among Shias, refers to the 12 successors of Muhammad, the last of whom is believed to return as humanity's savior. The city of Ray, Hasan's home, was also a center for another Shia current, the Ismailis, named for their allegiance to Ismail, the eldest son of Imam Jafar as Sadiq. Ismailis are the second largest denomination within Shia Islam, distinguished by their belief in a living, hereditary imam. In Ray, Hasan was introduced to Ismaili doctrine by two prominent da'is, or missionaries, Amir Zarab and Abu Nasr Sarraj. Following these studies, at the age of 17, Hasan converted to Ismailism and pledged allegiance to the Ismaili Imam of the time, the Fatimid Caliph al-Mustansir. The Fatimid dynasty, with its capital in Cairo, ruled the most powerful Muslim state of the era, though it faced constant threats from the Seljuk Turks, another powerful dynasty that had swept from Central Asia through Persia and the Middle East, establishing a Sunni sultanate. At 22, the newly converted Ismaili student Hasan ventured into these territories. He managed to impress Abd al-Malik ibn Atash, the chief Ismaili da'i in the Seljuk Sultanate, so much so that he was appointed a missionary himself. In this sensitive role, Hasan first traveled to the secret Persian Ismaili headquarters in Isfahan, deep within Seljuk territory, before journeying to Cairo and Alexandria to further his education. During his time in Egypt, Hasan clashed with significant figures within the Ismaili organization, particularly al-Afdal, the vizier or chief minister to the Fatimid court. The conflict centered on the succession to the caliphate and, by extension, the imamate, who would lead the Ismailis next. The reigning caliph, al-Mustansir, had designated his eldest son Imam Nizar as his successor. However, Vizier al-Afdal was lobbying to install Nizar's younger brother, Mustali, who happened to be his son-in-law. Hasan openly supported Nizar, making him an enemy of the powerful vizier. The immediate outcome of this intrigue was a further schism within Islam, with Nizari Ismailis now rivaling Mustali Ismailis. A second outcome was Hasan's exile by al-Afdal, leading to his return to Persia in June 1081. By then, he had become the most prominent da'i for the nascent Nizari community. Over the subsequent years, Hasan traveled extensively across Persia disseminating the Nizari message. During this period, he expanded his following and began formulating plans to liberate his homeland from Seljuk occupation. Hasan Sabbah's motivation for revolting against the Seljuks was multifaceted. From a religious standpoint, the ardently Sunni Seljuks made no secret of their hostility towards Shias of all sects, and the Nizaris and Ismailis likely feared for their religious freedom. Politically, Hasan maintained allegiance to the Egyptian Fatimids despite his exile, and by the 1070s the Seljuk Turks had advanced as far as the Sinai, threatening to uproot the caliphate. Nationally, Hasan's revolt could also be seen as an expression of Persian resentment against the alien rule of the Seljuk Turks. Hasan, though surely unfamiliar with Sun Tzu, devised a strategy that was pure art of war. He shrewdly assessed the weaknesses of his own faction and those of the Seljuks. The Nizaris were heavily outnumbered, while Seljuk leaders were geographically dispersed across the vast Persian territory. How could he maximize the effectiveness of his forces? How could he inflict severe blows on the occupiers without engaging in pitched battles across expansive terrain? His answer was to swiftly seize the high ground, establishing a network of impregnable mountain strongholds from which to launch targeted killings of political and military leaders throughout the country. The Assassin Creed was beginning to take shape. By 1087, Hasan had concentrated his efforts on recruiting a resistance movement within the Daylam region, a traditional Shia stronghold. By September 1090, he had successfully gained control of the region and seized the formidable fortress of Alamut, meaning the teaching of the eagle, nestled in the central Elburz mountains of the Rudbar region. He achieved this through cunning and peaceful means, secretly converting the soldiers of the local garrison one by one. Hasan fortified Alamut, making it impregnable, and ensured its self-sufficiency by improving the cultivation and irrigation systems of the Alamut Valley. He also established an important library, housing a vast collection of manuscripts and scientific instruments. After firmly establishing himself at Alamut, Hasan extended his influence by winning more converts and expanding his network of fortresses in Rudbar. In 1091, Hasan dispatched one of his followers, Da'i Hussein Qaini, to Quistan, near the border with modern-day Afghanistan. Hussein successfully ignited a popular uprising among local Shias seeking independence from the Seljuks, allowing the Nizaris to gain control of several towns in Quistan. In less than 2 years after the capture of Alamut, Hasan Sabbah had forged an independent territorial state for the Nizari Ismailis in the heart of the Seljuk Sultanate. The conflict soon intensified, The Persian Shia population naturally viewed the Seljuk Turks as invaders and oppressors. Sunni sources, however, offered a different perspective, asserting that the Seljuks had attempted to extend a friendly hand to the locals. Their Sultan Malik Shah, for instance, had appointed a Persian as his vizier, Abu Ali Hasan bin Ali bin Ishaq, better known as Nizam al-Mulk, which translates as the order of the country. A popular legend claimed that Hasan and Nizam had been classmates and friends in their youth, and after becoming vizier, Nizam had supposedly helped his old friend secure a post at Malik Shah's court. But soon their rivalry allegedly erupted, and Nizam conspired to have Hasan exiled. This narrative would cast Hasan's mission as one of personal revenge against a childhood friend who had betrayed him. Romantic as this story sounds, Nizam was 32 years older than Hasan, making it highly improbable that they were schoolmates. Thus, the events that followed were purely politically motivated. In 1092, Nizam launched a Seljuk counterattack against the Nizaris in Alamut and Quistan. But Hasan's strategy proved remarkably effective. His small garrisons, strategically positioned atop easily defensible mountain strongholds, successfully repelled attack after attack. During the siege of Alamut, Hasan prudently sent his wife and daughters to safety within another Ismaili community. He never brought them back, initiating a tradition of not allowing women into the fortress. Hasan's next move was to shift to the offensive. Lacking the numbers for a full-scale military campaign, Hasan relied on his preferred tactic, a targeted killing aimed at decapitating the Seljuk leadership. Hasan selected a fidai or faithful named Bu Tahir Arani to carry out the mission. Disguised as a Sufi mystic, Arani approached the litter in which his target was traveling. Swift and silent, his dagger left its sheath and plunged into Nizam al-Mulk. The vizier died on the spot, and the same fate befell Tahir Arani. He and other fidais serenely accepted that their missions would, in all likelihood, be suicidal. Arani was immediately cut down by Nizam's bodyguards. This marked the first high-profile assassination carried out by the faithful soldiers of the Nizari army. Hasan and his two immediate successors would order a total of 75 tactical killings, consistently targeting high-profile figures and never civilians. The occupiers frequently retaliated with massacres among Ismaili communities, which were then met with further surgical strikes on Hasan's orders. Unsurprisingly, the actions of the fidais earned them the intense hatred of the Seljuks and a significant portion of the Sunni community. Their enemies painted them as radical extremists and proto-terrorists, while simultaneously depicting them as dissolute drug addicts. This was the period when the Nizari fidais became known as Hashishin, or assassins, the users of hashish. Let's pause for a moment to address the name. Did the assassins, or Hashishins, actually use hashish? In reality, they never used that word to describe themselves. Their correct description would be fidais of the Nizari Ismaili army. The name was affixed to them by Marco Polo and William of Tyre, who had heard it from the Nizari's enemies in Syria. While it's true that soldiers throughout history have used recreational and prescribed drugs to prepare for battle, consider this. If you were Hasan, would you truly entrust a stoner with a delicate mission involving scaling castle walls, picking locks, evading guards, and assassinating a high-profile enemy? And what about the munchies? While the kebab, a stoner's best friend, was indeed invented by Turkic soldiers, that wasn't until 1377. So while it is generally accepted that the word assassin derives from hashish, it is now widely understood that these highly skilled and rigorously trained warriors were not operating under the influence of drugs. They were simply burdened with a derogatory slur, maliciously cast upon them by their numerous adversaries. The slur's potent sound, assassin, only exacerbated its adoption by popular European poets in the 13th and 14th centuries, most notably Dante Alighieri in his Divine Comedy. Shortly after Nizam al-Mulk's assassination, the Seljuk Sultan Malik Shah also died. The causes remain mysterious, possibly natural, or perhaps he was poisoned. As a result, the Sultanate plunged into chaos and a brutal civil war between Malik's eldest son, Berkyaruk, and his brother, Sanjar, who was supported by their half-brother, Muhammad Tapar. The state fractured further with the emergence of independent warlords. Capitalizing on this disorder, Hasan consolidated and extended his power, seizing more strategically located fortresses. His influence stretched as far as Damgan, 500 kilometers east of the Alamut headquarters, and even further to Khuzestan, 1,000 kilometers to the south. Hasan seemed unstoppable. During this period, he solidified his reputation as an austere and ascetic leader. In a short span of time, though the exact dates are unknown, he ordered the execution of both his sons, Muhammad for the transgression of drinking wine, and Ustad on suspicion of involvement in the death of Hasan's loyal lieutenant, Hussein Kaini. The Nizari leader personally retreated further from the outside world but politically pursued expansion. It is said he never again left his castle, but in the early years of the 12th century, Hasan began dispatching his da'is from Alamut into Syria. There, the Nizaris continued their practice of establishing mountain strongholds, the most significant of which was the Masyaf fortress. Years later, Masyaf would be commanded by Rashid ad-Din, a figure who achieved fame due to his numerous attempts to assassinate Saladin. It was he, not Hasan, who truly gave rise to the legend of the Old Man of the Mountain, and it was these Syrian assassins who would first establish contact with the Templars. Before continuing with Hasan's narrative, let's briefly explore the relationship between the assassins and the Knights Templar, even though it falls somewhat outside the direct scope of Hasan's life. Certain media franchises have depicted these two organizations as mortal rivals across ages and continents. Yet, upon closer examination, these factions had much in common. Both were elite corps of warriors, driven by both political and religious motivations, and both would, at various points, be slandered and accused of heresy by powerful enemies. The tension between assassins and Templars in the Levant, or the Holy Land, never fully escalated into an all-out clash. While hostilities occurred, the two groups sometimes acted as allies, as the Syrian Nizari were often more focused on battling other Muslim adversaries than Christians. From 1152 onwards, their interactions resembled those of rival cartels, each wary of encroaching too much on the other's assigned territories. In that year, the Fidais claimed one of their few Christian victims, Count Raymond of Tripoli. In reparation, the Templars in Lebanon demanded a tribute of 2,000 bezants a year, almost like protection money. On another occasion, it was the Syrian assassins who demanded protection money from none other than King Louis IX of France during his visit to Acre in modern-day Israel. If the king paid, the Old Man of the Mountain would spare his life. Grand Master Joinville of the Templars intervened, sending the envoy back empty-handed, but securing a non-aggression pact between the king and the Old Man. In 1097, Imam Nizar, the spiritual leader to Hasan and his men, was tragically killed in Cairo, buried alive between two walls by his rival Vizier al-Afdal. When news reached Hasan, he arranged for Nizar's young son to be rescued from Cairo and brought to safety at Alamut. Until this point, Hasan Sabbah had been the political and military leader of the Nizari in Persia. Now, in the absence of a manifest imam, he also assumed the role of religious leader for the entire Nizari community. In the closing years of the 11th century, Hasan launched an offensive close to the heart of the Seljuk Sultanate, targeting the fortress of Shadiz near the capital, Isfahan. His agent for this operation was Ahmad bin Atash, the son of Hasan's first teacher after his conversion to Ismailism. But Ahmad did not employ a dagger, he relied solely on faith. One by one, he converted the children, then the soldiers of the garrison. By 1100, Ahmad and the Nizaris had successfully infiltrated and occupied the castle, opening the road to Isfahan. Ultimately, however, the Nizari did not achieve a total victory. Meanwhile, the warring Seljuk brothers, Berki Aruk, Sanjar, and Muhammad Tapar, had agreed to a truce in order to unite against Hasan. The newly united Seljuks fought back, successfully securing Isfahan. The Nizari retaliated with more assassinations, which were in turn followed by massacres of Nizari civilians. In 1105, Tapar became sultan. 4 years later, he launched a second siege of Alamut, eager to put an end to the Nizari nuisance once and for all. Leading his army was Ahmad al-Mulk, the son of the Vizier Nizam, who had been assassinated in 1092. But, once again, Alamut held firm. By assault or by attrition, Alamut would not fall. The ongoing war had settled into a stalemate. By the time of Muhammad Tapar's death in 1118, The Nizaris were still successfully defending important, albeit scattered, territories, effectively constituting an independent Nizari state. However, a total victory and conquest of Persia from the Seljuks remained out of reach. In these years of stalemate, Hasan withdrew even further from the outside world, spending most of his time within his personal quarters at Alamut, engrossed in books, committing his doctrine to writing, and administering the affairs of his realm. In 1124, at the age of 74, Hasan sensed his life nearing its end. He summoned Kia Buzurg Umid, a trusted lieutenant from the Lamasar fortress, and designated him as his successor at Alamut. Hasan Sabbah died after a brief illness on June 12, 1124, and was buried near Alamut, the fortress that had been his home and the symbol of his power for so many years. The Nizari Fidais, or assassins if you prefer, continued to harass the Seljuks and other foes in Persia for another century. Nizari worshippers regularly visited Hasan's mausoleum until a new, unstoppable enemy swept through Central Asia and Persia, the Mongols. In 1256, they laid the final siege to Alamut. The proud fortress, the teaching of the eagle, eventually fell and was demolished. Though the assassins remained active in Syria for a time, their legend had come to an end in the place that had been their first home.